KEPX presents a Levine Media production. This is Dignity Leadership with hosts Brooke Coleman and Rich Levine.
So it's been a hot minute. It's been a month since our last episode, Brooke. So how have you been?
I've been all right.
Just all right?
Just all right. No, actually, I'm pretty good.
You know, that's one of my deals I do, right? I ask people how they are, and I try to get them out of their rut, because everybody usually says, how are you? Fine. No, are you really fine? So you're answering with honesty. I like it.
Thank you.
It's good. So you remember a couple months ago, we did our very first show for 2022?
I do.
And you brought up this idea of the toolbox.
Yes, I did.
That was a pretty cool story. So how's your toolbox? How's it going?
It's a great question. Thanks for asking.
You're welcome.
My toolbox is pretty good. I think I've added some tools lately.
Give us an example.
So big learning curves. I've been taking some classes, learning some things, and here I'm gonna put something in my toolbox that probably is not expected, but I had to add an extra dose of humility to that toolbox recently. It has been a hard couple of months.
Well, it happens to the best of us.
Yeah.
So continue. Go on.
Well, I think with that dose of humility, here's what came about it though. And this is huge for me. You know yourself, you're growing, you want to be good at certain things, but sometimes it takes more than one try. And if you're a recovering perfectionist, and I know people use that all the time, and truly, I don't even know what that is. I mean, I think for each person, there's their own definition. For me, it was, you just cannot fail. You've got to be in that top 5 within your class, or whatever it is. You've got to pass at any cost. Well, I might have failed my first class in my life.
But were you set up for failure? Because
I know the situation. Okay, twofold though. Part of it is adult learning is different than when you're in your 18, fresh out of high school, and you're going back to school. So I'm getting my master's right now, and learning so many amazing things. But I'm working. Life happens. Life is different at this age, and I think for me the learning tool was, I still need to be able to balance to a certain degree. There is something to recognizing your limits. And I think that's where the humility came in. I did have to take a step back and go, you know what? I have learned, let me make that clear. I've learned so much, and there's still more to learn, and I will be taking this class again.
Well, learning your limits is a good piece, and you can understand how far you can go with your boundaries. And so when you've come up to those boundaries and when you got to stop at them, right? So another piece that I want to talk about, and you're saying you've grown, and you and I talked about this on that very first show, and it was how our friendships have grown. Mm-hmm. And I talked about how I bring my friends to hang out with you, and you bring your friends to hang out with us. But what's been really cool is that thing is blending together. Your friends are now my friends are your friends. And we were just sitting down the other night, and we were just talking about this at happy hour. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, it was fun. It's kind of cool to see that group meld, different personalities,
Yeah. So I'm going to surprise you today and bring a friend on.
Oh, tell me more.
No. We can't just slow your horses down a little bit. We got a little farther to go. I want to know how you're doing on your New Year's resolutions.
Oh, man. Okay. So doesn't everybody start out the year, you're going to drink a ton of water, eat only vegetables, and exercise? Here's the thing. I have tried out some really cool exercises. I went bouldering for the first time recently, and it was hard, and it was fun. Took my first bar class, also hard.
Is that you drinking that a bar class?
It's a bar class, yeah. So there's a bar that you can hold on to, and I bet you could probably balance a drink right there as well. It's a skill.
What is bouldering? Sorry.
Excellent question. Thank you.
It's like bowling, but different.
With a D at the end. No, bouldering is rock climbing to a certain degree. Now, there's going to be somebody out here that's like, that is not what it is, because I'm an expert and I know what it is. I am not. I did one class, but it's indoors. So these are indoor gyms that have all of these different levels and stuff that are built out. And you're just going in and practicing that skill set and building. For me, it was upper body strength. And
that's pretty cool.
And you're meeting people. I met 6 new people. It was awesome, just really cool people to hang out with.
So bouldering is a networking opportunity.
It sure is.
I mean, everything could be a networking opportunity if we
Everything
look at
can
it from
be.
the right lens.
To anyone wondering, I'm not on the show, by the way. I'm just a producer. So.
That's all
Like,
good.
where'd
We're
that
good.
voice come from?
We got Kevin E, the Monster Millennial, in the house. He's going to join us. We're going to have him come on too at the end of the show because it's part of what we're doing. So this year we got the new format. We're doing the intro.
Yes.
So we're dragging everybody's out. Come on, get to the point. So today we're going to try to talk about active listening. There's the surprise. And if you remember, so we're a few months into the year, right? And I got to work on that. That's one thing I noticed.
I was about to say, let's talk
I got to
about-
stop. I got to stop with the right. I say right too often.
Well, I just interrupted you. And so I would like to point out that that's not active listening. And I wasn't letting you finish. I was thinking about a conversation we had earlier, and I got really excited. It tends to happen. So I was going to ask you about your listening. And clearly, I'm the one that probably needs to listen a little bit more.
Well, so here's the plan. And we mentioned it. I said on that very first show of the year that I wanted to work on listening. Because we
Yes.
went around. I called you out. I outed you, if you remember. I said, hey, it's only fair if you
Yep.
get back at me. And you said, yeah, you need to work on listening. I mean, it was all around the room. We talked about it. But if we go back to what we talked about in that first show, we said, hey, grab our podcast. You can listen to it once a month. We got new shows out. And we're going to talk about a different topic every month. So if you are struggling to find what you want to work on, use our podcast. So here we are. We're a few months into the year. If you haven't, and this is your first show, go back, rewind, start over. But we're going to talk about active listening today. And you had mentioned something too, and you said life is not linear. You remember that when you mentioned that on the last show?
I
So
do.
we got
Yeah,
to
I
ride the
remember
roller
that.
coaster, right?
Yeah, always. Yeah.
And so here we are. We're riding the roller coaster. You're bouldering. Is bouldering riding a roller coaster?
Oh yeah, it is not linear. It's not linear at all. Yeah, it's definitely a roller coaster. It's awesome, and you're taking risks, right?
Yeah.
I would say, if you're doing it cautiously, you're taking calculated risks. Can you fall? Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, isn't that life? Like, you can try to be as careful as you can be. Will you still have stumbling blocks? Yeah.
Yeah.
Hopefully you learn from them. Hopefully something changes as you look at whatever that was in front of you so that you can look at whatever your next step is.
So with today's show, active listening, in 30 to 45 minutes, by the time we get our guest on, get her introduced, get her through, and we go to our learning problem, I'm going to have active listening down pat. I'm going to master it in 30
Master it
minutes.
in 30 seconds or less. Okay.
Which we talked about that. That's not going to happen. But anyway, so I got to tell you,
Yeah.
so Heather's our guest. She's going to come on. I'll do a full bio here in a
Awesome.
second.
Okay.
But anyway, I was hanging out with her and her significant other. And we actually went out to dinner a couple times. And then we went to Fredericksburg. And it
Ooh,
was
fun.
incredible. We had a blast. My wife might have got a little tipsy on that one. That's another story for another show. But we were sitting and we were talking. And we went this whole weekend and just hanging out, having fun. And it was a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So on Sunday, we go to brunch. And we had to wait 2 hours, I think, to get in. It was forever.
my
So
goodness.
it was worth it, though. It was an awesome brunch. But we grabbed a couple of Bloody Marys. We got the tailgate down on the truck, and we're sitting out there talking. And she brings up the story about teaching a class at a university, and it's active listening. I'm like, all right, stop right there. You're not going any farther. You are coming on the show. So you're going to have it.
Nice.
So today, I've invited Heather. The world knows her as Dr. Heather Barton-Weston. And I tell you, every time we do these shows, that I always got to put the smartest people in the room.
Yes.
Well, today we have one of the smartest people I know in the room with us.
Nice.
So Dr. Heather Barton-Weston's research interests include motivational changes to healthy behaviors, the effectiveness of health interventions, effects of service learning and experiential learning among health educators, health behaviors within the Hispanic community. So we need to ask her about that, she picks out the Hispanic community. So that's got my interest. And the use of sustainability as health-based educational intervention. Her background includes a Bachelor's of Science in Exercise and Science from the University of Texas, San Antonio. She's got a Master's of Arts from the University of Texas, San Antonio, and a Doctor of Philosophy from Texas A&M.
Wow. That's quite a resume.
It's
right
quite
there.
a resume. And
I'm
it goes
excited.
on. It
Yeah?
goes on. She's also contributed to numerous publications. She's done a bunch of presentations focusing on behavior change related to exercise, nutrition, sustainability, civic engagement through the service learning specifically related to Hispanic populations. She's an active member of the American Public Health Association, American Alliance for Health, Physical Education, Recreation and Dance, and says something here, and she knows how to boulder. And she's also part of the National Association for Sport and Physical Education, Bouldering, National Wellness Institute, American College of Sports Medicine.
Wow.
I need a drink of water. Holy cow. Physical Education and Health Education, Texas Alliance for Health, Physical Education, Recreation, and Dance. That is an incredible resume bio. So with that, I want to welcome Dr. Heather to the show.
Thank you very much.
Hi, Heather.
Hello, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well.
I'm excited to be here. Yeah, thanks.
Thanks for coming.
So I don't waste any time. I just get right to the point.
Yes, he does.
What's your definition of leadership?
Oh, that's a great question. I think leadership is almost an undefinable term. It's more in my opinion and perception, it's more of what you do and how you engage versus that of what you actually say and or dictate. And I think that's an important part of being a leader. It allows for relatability, it allows for inclusion, and it allows for expression of idea among those that you encounter and work with.
I got to pick out a piece of that you just said that I love. And my grandmother always told me, Rich, it's not what you say, it's how you make people feel. I think that is so incredible because leadership, it's more about the emotions and the feeling side of it, which is pretty cool.
Well, and what I heard as you were saying that, or it just the way it resounded to me is it's active. It's not a passive. It's not a passive thing that you're doing, right? It is active and it is changing. It is evolving, and it is what you do. You use the word "do," not what you say.
Right, and I think that in it there's a level of I don't know, it's almost like a level of attraction for individuals that are leaders, for those that are not, right? Because they're not so concerned about dictating other people's behaviors, but more in line, they're carrying themselves and allowing themselves to do the things that other people would like to do, and they embrace those other people coming in, and that's what really draws people into being around a leader. And so whether you're thrown into a leadership position or you just happen to be a natural leader, the reality of the situation is that it's not so much of what you're saying, it's how you carry yourself and how you engage that allows you to be a true leader.
The other piece you just hinted at is its inclusion, it's belonging.
Right. Right. Yeah. And I think, again, that goes back to the idea that it's almost like an individual that it's a leader, a good leader is puts out this aura that attracts, right? But they don't shut off when the people come in. It's almost like embracing the fact that they want to be a part of that. And so you allow for expression and you allow for contribution, and that's where the inclusivity kind of comes in, because it allows for you to recognize that by engaging with others, you're really just doing nothing more than bringing out the best of yourself. So it's more of a group kind of environment versus that of the individualistic environment. So yeah, leaders are ones that are more in line to do versus dictate and tell.
Mm-hmm.
It's more of a action of leadership. You just mentioned it, Brooke. Mm-hmm. So it's don't do what I say, do as I do. And so it's the actual part of, and going back to it again, it's the doing. So tie in active listening. What is active listening? What's your definition of active listening?
That's a great question. Active listening, from my perspective, is being engaged and genuinely hearing and receiving all of the communication that is going on within that particular conversation. And so it's not just being there physically and kind of wandering mentally. You are genuinely focused on what's being said. And active listening is a skill that many people don't have. Right, we tend to kind of float around and think and do, and I do it too. Right, squirrel. But the reality is that it's a skill that if you can hone in and actually get very good at it, it allows you to be a better person.
Yeah.
And to contribute better to those around you.
I'm curious now with this, can that skill be learned?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's kind of a running joke. I mean, I used to tell my children all the time, I'm like, you can't teach heart and you can't teach dedication, but man, any other skill, you can teach it and learn it.
Okay.
So yeah, if you're willing to learn it and you have the desire to learn it, yeah, absolutely. It's a learnable skill.
And I believe from the schooling I've gone through and the books I've read that you can learn leadership, and listening is a part of leadership.
Absolutely.
You and I've talked about this in the past, Brooke. My why statement: to learn, to grow, to lead, create a world of dignity.
Yes.
And I didn't come across that right away. I mean, I stumbled in one of the first days of class, actually the very first class, last day we had to do a presentation. And then we said, all right, for the rest of the master's program, what is it you want to work on? And I mentioned two things I wanted to work on: listening and creative thinking, or critical thinking, not creative. I can think creatively. No, I can't. But how to think critically. And then as we went on, I discovered, my why statement. And when you get to the end, so you got to learn. So to learn, you got to listen, right? And then you grow. So you got to go out and you got to do. And you're going to make mistakes. So then you come back and you start doing them. And then once you do that, you kind of go through the cycle and you continue to grow. Now you can lead. But what changed everything for me was dignity. Because you've got to listen to them. You've got to understand them. And it opened up my mind to critical thinking to actually go, wait a second. And you touched on this in your definition. Okay, now I'm starting. I can't say I understand you or, oh, yeah, I know how you feel. No, I don't know how you feel. I'm never going to know how you feel. But I can get as close as I possibly can, walk next to you, and try to identify and say, okay, that must have really been an incredible experience, or that must have been a horrible experience. Tell me some more. How did it make you feel? Give me that information. Yep. And now you've crossed that line. You start going into active listening, I think. But you're the expert, so you're here to help us.
Yeah, so you're you're pretty much on point when you talk about that opportunity, and yes, dignity is given, but it's not just dignity, it's respect. You're giving the speaker the respect that you've engaged in, right? You're sitting there having a conversation with someone, so it's a social interaction that you should give respect to and time to. So yes, that does give dignity. I think more importantly, when we do active listening, I think what we're really looking at is our ability to truly comprehend, and if we don't, be able to be open and honest, right? Here comes that relatability piece, to say or ask, well, what do you mean by that? As a society, we move too fast nowadays, right?
Yeah.
We're too busy talking, or we're too busy on our phones. And, in reality, when it's all said and done, we don't have that opportunity to really get clarification. We don't have opportunity to learn. And we don't have opportunity to truly have that deep connection with the other person that we're having a conversation with. So that's where active listening becomes extremely important.
Yeah, that's good. And just for our audience out there listening, you suggested that we read The Art of Active Listening by Richard Banks. So if you're on YouTube, here's a copy. I think it can show up on there. It's a great book. I read it, by the way. And you've actually sent me 5 steps that for active listening that you wanted to break down. And this book is based on 10. And you and I had a conversation on that. Like, 10, come on. How do we, for us Reds who are super short, we want to get to the point. You've got it down to 5, right?
Yeah, so Banks does an amazing job on the 10 steps. He also does a great job in the read of giving examples of how to work towards those steps. But in my field of public health and community health, we don't have that much time when we are working with clients, right? And so I teach my students, or my future students that will be working with clients, there are 5 things that you should do. So
hang on right there before you get to the 5. I know you're ready to jump in, but what I want to cover before you get there is we went through your bio, and it's all about it doesn't have anything to do with active listening.
No.
So how did you get to this space where you're teaching active listening? Because you told me this story one other time, and it's awesome.
Yeah, so I actually specialize in public and community health, and part of where the research end of it comes in is that I develop and implement health promotion programs. And that means that those programs have to go out into community members, but you can't just go out into the community and tell people, right, this is what you're going to do because it's good for you. You have to genuinely know, what is it you want because in my world, health promotion, you're not going to get people to engage in the program if it's not something that they want. So you have to go out and have conversations. You have to find out what they need. What do they have, and how can we better that? And that's where active listening comes into play, because you're asking people to open up on intimate information on health, right? And give you all this information to almost a complete stranger. And so you have to build a relationship, and that building comes with conversations and talking and giving respect and listening. And if you don't listen, then we really can't ask deeper questions for us to be able to go deeper into what their needs are.
Yeah.
So that's how I got there.
So within your bio too, you had 2 different references to the Hispanic community.
Yes, I
and
did.
within community health, tell me more about that. Like, why specifically that group of people?
That's a great question. Okay, so first off, the university that I work at is a Hispanic serving institution. 75% of my student body that I have, including those that will be working in the field of community and public health, are Hispanic. But on top of that, I am also Hispanic. So my running joke from the time I was really little is I'm a mutt. Right, so I was blended before blended was blended.
You were cool before it was time to be cool.
Yeah, exactly. So I kind of own that. So when they ask what is blended, I'm like, it's me. That's what I have, right? And so my mom's side of the family is Hispanic. My dad was Caucasian, and I identify with my mother's side. And so it's something that's important to me, because I have seen the destruction of much of what the traditional culture of the Hispanic behaviors and community has as far as their health goes. My grandmother and herself, she had type 2 diabetes from the time she was about 45. So it's personal, and it's close to home. And that's why I've chosen to work with, I go back to my roots. I've chosen to work with my community members.
Neat.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for sharing
That's a great question.
Yeah.
That was pretty awesome.
Yeah.
That's good.
That was good.
Yes. So, are you ready to start diving into your steps?
Yeah. So
What's your number one? What's your number one?
Okay, so and I know when I sent you these steps, I told you, I was like, man, don't judge me, and you started laughing. You're like, no. I work with 19 to 20-year-olds in a classroom that are going to work with community members, and so they're typical teenage kids. They're on their phone. They're disconnected. It's a skill you're asking them to learn that most adults don't know how to use and learn. So I typically use terms to catch their attention. So the first thing I tell them to do, shut up. Just shut up.
So, and you and I talked about this on another podcast. I'm gonna bring it up again. Spell silent with different letters. What's it spell? Or use the same letters, but just rearrange them.
Listen.
Exactly. So if you're not silent, you can't
That's
listen.
right. That's right.
Yeah. I have to tell you, when I say that in the classroom, it's almost like, who's she talking to? Everybody looks up, and it really, the terminology is there to get their attention, right?
Yep.
Right.
The idea here is that when your first step should really just be quiet. Just be quiet and move into that second step that I like to talk about, and that's being engaged and focused both mentally and physically. Be in the moment.
Yeah, you got to be present.
Yeah,
and that's
absolutely.
difficult for everybody because there's so many distractions. And you talked about it a second ago. Is having your phone. Put your phone down. The cool thing about the podcast, I have to put my phone down, so I can't do it. But I'm very guilty of that, where somebody will start a conversation that doesn't pertain to me, or it's not about me, or it's not one of my interests. And we'll be at a table of 6, 8, whatever, and all next thing you know, I'm checking football scores, I'm checking basketball scores, I'm looking at my Facebook page. Hey, did anybody like our recent posts? And I'm out there and I'm totally unengaged, and I have to say, you're not paying attention.
Yeah, it's not just about the embarrassing part for yourself. You have to put yourself in the speaker's shoes, right? If you are having a conversation with somebody and you are looking at them and you're speaking, and then all of a sudden they disengage and they turn away from you and they go to the computer, or they pick up their cell phone, or maybe it's something as random as somebody else walking by, right? And they've disengaged. What you've just given to the speaker is not as important to what's going on over here. That's a problem, because that message can be hurtful to the speaker. And I don't know if you've ever had this happen to you, but all of a sudden the speaker just stops.
You shut down.
and you go, oh, I'm sorry, what were you saying? And the speaker goes, oh, nothing, don't worry about it.
Yeah, because you've thrown them
Right.
off.
Done.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's over.
There's a
moment is
wall
gone.
that's been built, right?
Exactly. Yeah, you've hurt them. That's where the respect and the dignity that you spoke of earlier kind of comes from. Yeah.
So I actually stumbled on that. It was a little stroke of genius, but it's helped me. The dignity part.
Yes.
To learn, to grow, to
Okay.
lead, and create a world of dignity, which we've translated in the motto of dignity leadership, and it's taken me to a different level. And I'm probably my own worst critic. And you've told me this before too, Brooke. So you don't hurt my feelings. You say, Rich, you're not listening. But I have to really focus and pay attention. And we talked about it in the very, very first podcast over a year ago. And it was talking about the different personality traits. And I'm a red. And at that one, we identified I was blue. But as we went through the pandemic, you start changing. All my reds started coming out. And now that I'm working for myself, it's even come out way, way more. And it's like, be bright, be brief, be gone. That's the motto for a red. So I struggle with paying attention because I'm ready to move on to the next thing. And that kind of leads to another question I want to ask you and how it fits in here before we get to your next three is I believe that speaking engagements, communication, the power's in the listener. Because if I'm talking to you and you're not listening to me, it's not communication, right? I can send you an email. If you don't read it, is that communication?
Okay, so it's so funny you said that. And we've had this conversation before because I
don't remember. What?
Yeah, I'm a red too, right? So I'm also a red. And the funny part about this is that, and you asked, can the skill be learned?
Yeah.
It was one that took some time, and I had to be very focused on my own behaviors, which, by the way, self-reflection is probably one of the hardest things to do. But if you can imagine two computers talking to one another, right? And then all of a sudden, the internet disconnects. Now that communication chain is over. Yeah. Well, that's no different than you and I having a conversation. If I'm looking at you, because this is physical communication, and then I'm having an auditory component, which is the communication spoken, or with our hands, whatever, that's one chain, right? But for it to be returned, you have to stay engaged. At some point, if you stop listening, the internet is gone and it is no longer communicating. So yeah.
I just learned something about myself. You helped me. My upload speed is way faster than my download speed. If somebody's trying to talk to me, it's like, wait a second, the modem just timed out. I'm uploading some more stuff, so you're gonna have to wait till I'm done. See, I just did it right there. I just hijacked the conversation. Upload speed.
And you weren't actively listening because you're too busy thinking about what was going on in your mind.
I was.
Instead of what I was saying.
But you see, there's this really neat thing. No, it's
busted.
called a podcast, and I got to keep the show going.
I got you.
And here's what I'm thinking. While you were saying that, I'm like going, okay, this is going to be a struggle for me today. This is where my head was before we came in to record and do the show is how am I going to active listening? Because I got to keep things going. I got to keep the show on track. And we've got an agenda to do, right? Because Mr. Kevin E., the podcast producer, the Monster Millennial over there, is going to charge me by the minute. And if I go 2 hours, he's like thinking, yes, yes. And I'm going, no. So we got stuff to do. So with that, we're a half an hour into the show. We've only covered 2 points so far. So we probably better keep on moving, right?
Yeah.
No, just split it up into two.
Split it into two shows. Oh, no, but do you have a comment?
Well, I was thinking, okay, so there are the two parts of listening that are key, right? I think we often, and I think that's what's been happening. You're saying,
What?
I am listening.
Sorry.
Wait, is this thing on? Excuse me, what? We listen to respond. Because we want to know, okay, wait, you said that? All right, I got that. I'm going to...
We listen to react. We listen to react.
We're reacting and
Yes.
responding, right?
Yeah.
But are we engaging and are we understanding? Because that's the other side of that coin, right?
Okay, so I'm so glad you said that. We're not supposed to listen to respond, right? We're supposed to be listening to connect. And to connect, you have to be engaged and open yourself to embracing different emotions and feelings that the other person is providing you as part of that, right? And so this is where you kind of... And you'll hear Banks have an entire step on this, on empathy. And that's kind of part of my step number 2, right? Where I'm like, you have to be focused and open both mentally and physically. So all of it has to be, it's a connection. It's not about responding back.
Right.
It's about building that connection. And that's really at the end of the day what communication is about, because we're social creatures. And that socialization gets disrupted when we do not effectively communicate. And so really, communication is about connection, and listening is about connecting.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So let's stay on track. So let's get to your third bullet point, or your third point. So the first one was shut up. The second one
Correct.
is engage and focus mentally and
Correct.
physically. Number 3.
So number 3 is, and you can do this any way you want to, but as soon as the communication has stopped from the sender or whoever you're speaking with, reword it and make sure you understand. Ask
Yeah.
let me make sure I understand where you're coming from. A lot of times we are so lost in our own heads, kind of like what you just did a minute ago, right? We're so lost in our own heads. The message itself may not have come across to the receiver correctly. And you want to ensure that you have gotten that. Now, you don't want to ask them every time, let me make sure I got that, because now you're going to sound like a broken record. It should be a conversational piece. But the reality is that you should almost reiterate. And it's all, in addition to that, it's actually you providing them feedback. Again, here comes the empathy and connection. Hey, I heard you. Let me just make sure I've got this, right? Yeah. And allow them to speak on how you just responded.
So what
Which
happened?
goes to 4, which is shut up again. Shut up.
You are red. You're already on to number 4.
Yes, but 3 and 4 should go kind of simultaneously, right? So give it to them and then shut up.
So shut up and let me reply to that, okay?
Yeah,
That's number 4. It's my turn. And now you've gotten me all off track. But we're talking about. See, now you've got me flustered. That's
Sorry,
not good.
I'm
You
sorry.
can't. What I was going to talk about is what if the person repeats it back to you, says back what they heard, so they translate it, they interpret it, but it's not what you intended. It's not what you meant. You're like, whoa, what do you? I mean,
That's a good question.
That's a great question. But you know what? You're okay. Again, the idea here is to connect, and it's a respect thing. You've given me the opportunity now to ensure you do understand. And that's a gift. I mean, most people will run off and not think anything of it and be like, well, I hope they got it. I mean, thanks, right? And you may disconnect and may never even hear from each other again, or whatever the case may be. But for you to take the time to ask me, that shows you are genuinely vested. You care. And that's a gift to me as the person having that conversation, and allows me the opportunity to say, yeah, you got what I've said, or actually, no, that's not quite what I meant by that. And then to articulate the clarification for you.
yeah, because I think when we communicate, a lot of times is we get into the jargon, or we make assumptions that somebody else is going to know what we're talking about. And it goes on, and next thing you know, it's like you're not even on the same wavelength. You're not even on the same page. And then you've got to ask for that clarity and get on that same page.
Yeah, and see, actually, that's a differentiation on the listener. The listener takes them to a different level of what the speaker actually said, right?
Yeah.
And so you're almost projecting or futuristically thinking where that's going instead of staying engaged in active listening.
That's interesting.
But that's why you have to be careful. The active listening is in the moment. And you can't forward think what you're going to presume they're going to say and go with it, which is why it's a gift to get it back when you've heard it, and then you reiterate it to make sure.
Which also goes back in our little active listening loop to the beginning when you said people just wait to respond, because I'm anticipating what you're going to say.
Right.
And so I've shut down my listening, and now I'm like, my brain's going, I know where she's going with this. I'm going to jump in and answer it. And then you're like, and then people wonder how they become so disengaged or so disassociated.
And why does that happen so much? I'm just curious if you've done any studying just of human nature in that sense with what you've done. Why do we jump? Why do we interrupt so often? Because I see that as being more of the norm than the not, just in general.
Right. And so personally, no, I've not done any research on that particular topic. There is a lot of research out there in psychology in relation to that. But let's just be real honest. From a social paradigm component, we as individuals feel like we have to be speaking, right? That silence is an uncomfortable silence when it's really not. We feel like we have to be speaking for the other person to feel like I'm engaged. And it's more of a social kind of cultural expectation. When in reality, what we've not recognized is the person you're having the conversation with feels, minimalized when you cut them off, or when you're throwing in your 2 bits. But you've not allowed them the opportunity to say what was on their mind, and that keeps them from being able to share. And that's where that connection again comes back into
Yeah.
play. Yeah.
So we're speaking with Dr. Heather. And for our listeners,
Look, I'm
your-
going to tell
your
you, I
stuff-
told you this a little while ago. You don't have to call me Dr. Heather. I did not get my PhD to be called Dr. anything. Yeah, so you don't have to call me that. You can just call me Heather, or you can call me like my students call me BW.
Beat-up.
Yeah, BW. I get that a
you?
lot. Yeah, I do. Yeah.
I just call you the big H.
There you go.
Big
That'll
H.
work too. Yeah.
So anyway, we're talking about active listening, and the book that you have your topics are loosely based on are The Art of Active Listening by Richard Banks.
Right.
So we've covered what? We've covered 4 so far, right?
Of mine.
We've covered, yes. We've
4.
covered 4 years. There's 10 in the book. So if you
Right.
want to learn more and you want to go out and nerd out with us, you can go read this book. Otherwise, just keep hitting rewind on this podcast and hit like, and then find us on all of the social media platforms and say, you guys are awesome, because that really helps our algorithms go up. But anyway, so we've gotten 4 so far. Shut up. That's number 1. Number 2 is engage and focus mentally and physically.
Correct.
You know, I want to talk about the physically thing. So here we go, getting off.
Wait, go through all 4 and then
Okay.
come back because I want
All
to hear
right.
all 4 again. Kind of.
Okay, so shut up is number 1.
Okay.
Engage and focus both mentally and physically is number 2. Number
right.
3, ensure you understand what the individual has stated. Repeat the question.
Okay.
Number 4 is shut up. Let
Okay.
them respond.
So I'm going to shut up and let you go back to number 2.
Number 2, physically. So when you look at somebody, and I'm guilty of this, and every human being does it whether they want to admit it or not, we make judgments within a couple of seconds. So when you talk about communication, there is an eye, a physical, and it's like, oh, you're wearing polka dots today. Oh, she must be very, very smart because she's in polka dots. This guy wearing the hat on a podcast, he's a leader. There's no way he can be smart because he's wearing a baseball hat. You can't do that. People make those stereotypes. So that's another part of the communication piece that comes in is when you walk in, people have already made judgments about you.
Assumptions.
Before you even open your mouth and say anything.
Yeah, and you should know that comes across to the sender, right? So the physical communication is just as important as the verbal communication. If you sit with your arms crossed, the message is you are not open to hearing whatever's going on.
Yeah.
If you are looking down, you're not really looking and engaging with the person, right? Or you know what? Here's one for you. Where we first met, right? We're all hanging out and we're visiting in a bar. Well, had I not been looking at you talking in the group, you and I would have not had conversation
Correct.
and engaged, right?
Yep.
Had I had been looking around the room, that friendship would not have been able to build, and then the networking for business could have built. And that's part of that communication. So that's just as important as the verbal.
And I mentioned it on the start of the show today, and we talked about it in our very first episode of this year, and that was that friendship circle that we're building. I've noticed that my friendships have become stronger and more powerful because I'm still not a great listener. I'm a better listener, and I continue to work on it.
Yeah.
But now I can start to do those things. And I'll guarantee you, Heather, had you met me 2 years prior to when you did, we would not be sitting in this room right now having this conversation. Same with you, Brooke. It wouldn't have happened
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I would have already had my stereotypes and all my biases and everything. It's like, all right, you're not my type. I'm not going to listen to you. I'm not going to go on. Instead, I've changed my focus as an individual. And it's like, you know what? This is an opportunity for learning. So it goes back to learning, to grow, to lead, create a world of dignity. I'm learning from people.
You know what I was just thinking of too, to just kind of wrap up this point with both of y'all's, but body language is key. When I was managing this huge department in a nonprofit healthcare system, what I told my team over and over and over again was look at them in the eye. Look at whoever you're speaking to in the eye and smile with your eyes and everything else. So here's the thing, post-pandemic, this world that we're in, or current pandemic, I think I go back and forth on that all the time. Where are we? Who knows? I don't know.
We're still in the woods.
Well, but can you learn to smile with your eyes now? Because now this is missing, right? But can we still engage? Absolutely.
Yeah, eye
Absolutely.
contact.
There's something huge about that in building relationships and communication. It's key.
And
Well,
Heather,
it's a key.
and Heather mentioned that a minute ago. Her and I met each other by eye contact.
Yep.
It wasn't, she didn't bump into me. I didn't, it was like intentional, like eyes lock, or like,
Yes.
holy cow, what can I learn from her, and vice versa. But we're getting close. So we've got a few minutes. We're getting close.
Number
we got to get
five.
to number
Number
five.
Okay. And number 5 is before you respond, take a few minutes to reflect and think about the message that you just received. Too many times we just, bleh, right? And we just say something. But when you say something, you want to make sure you say it with purpose. And the reason that becomes important is because then your message is powerful. You know, like I said, I think it's a social thing. We feel like we have to talk all the time. We don't. It's the reality. I tell my students all the time, I'm like, if you ask a question and you start to feel that uncomfortable silence, the trick of the trade is grab your water bottle and take a drink, right? Don't say anything.
Yes.
It's okay. We don't have to speak all the time and put our contribution in.
The silence is golden.
Well, what the beauty of the pause? That is a nugget right there. We need to have another podcast and just talk about that piece right there, because it's an art. I mean, that is a skill in itself, but that is not done normally. That is uncomfortable. That is awkward. There is this space now that must be filled with noise. Think about our world. We have the TV on all the time. We've got the radio. Some people have both going on, or they have a TV in every room, right? God forbid all 4 football games aren't on all at the same time. But it's true. I like listening to music, but I'll have like on a Spanish channel in one room. I'll have on a country music one on the other. It's nuts. But I like the noise. We're more comfortable with noise than we are with silence.
Yeah, and the reality is what you're doing really then is you are silencing your thoughts.
Yes.
Right? And the purpose of the reflection is to hear those thoughts. And it's not just from an intellectual piece of it, it's also from an emotional piece. You embrace all of that. And that allows you to effectively give back to the person that was originally having a conversation with you. You then can engage. You're then connected. And that's what you really need to do. And that's the purpose of the reflection. And it's so funny you said we need to do a podcast on that.
Yeah.
You should ask some of your friends, what is reflection? And you'll be surprised. Many of them are like, I don't know. Right? But the idea here is that it's the time, it's the pause, it's the quiet, it's the silence. Let yourself hear how you feel and think.
Yeah. Isn't reflection what I see in the mirror every day when I...
No, not really. Not really.
That's sheer beauty. That's what you're saying. So when I see myself in the...
Gorgeous. Gorgeous.
Yes, and we always talk about this, right? And we're supposed to be humble as leaders. And here comes my ego just right in. It's all about me. It's me. All right. So for our listeners, let's go back real quick. Just the 5. Number 1, shut up. 2 is engage, both mentally and physically. 3, and engage doesn't mean go get hooked up, right?
No, stay
Number
connected.
3,
yeah.
Number 3, ensure you understand what the individual has stated or said to you. So repeat the question back to them. And it's probably a little annoying if you repeat it back exactly. Right?
Yeah, I mean, you want to have a conversation about it, but make sure you clarify what you have heard. Yeah.
And then shut up.
Yeah.
And let them clarify. Right?
Yeah, the idea here is a lot of times what'll happen is and especially like in my field, you know, the more information I know about this person and their health and their needs, the more I can provide solutions. If I am constantly talking, that deeper information I'm needing will never surface. So, and again, I use the term shut up to get attention when I'm teaching, but the reality is that, you know, just stop and let them speak.
Yeah. And then the last one is reflect before you respond.
Right. Reflect.
Yes.
There's a lot of, it's funny because you said the pausing. There's a lot of pausing. You know, you're going to have to slow yourself down. And as a red person, you know, you're constantly wanting to go. I'm constantly wanting to go. It's a struggle to slow down. So it's okay. Slow down.
That's okay. Slow down. All right. So we got to wind this down. We're going to come into the last 15 minutes of this show. So we're going to go through my favorite part, the why statement. So I'm going to ask you one last question. Would you like to stay for the conclusion as we talk about what we've learned and how we're going to use this? Or do you we'll just cut off the mic, hot mic, gone? Your call.
No, I'm absolutely willing to stay. I'd love to hear what you've learned from this conversation.
Sweet. I love it when we can do this to guests. We just put them on the spot right there. All right.
Oh, wait, you didn't say that. Hold on a second. That's not fair.
No, it is fair. It's
you didn't say you're putting me on the spot.
You got spots on your shirt, so I'm putting you on the spot.
All right.
All right, it's deal. All right. So, Kevin E., I hope you've been paying attention for this prior 45
Kevin
minutes.
E. is always listening.
He is.
No, as a red, I struggle with the exact same thing Rich does. So.
Yeah.
But so
being
maybe
in this
not.
position, I'm forced to listen a lot, you know.
No, and you have the perfect radio voice. Voice.
Thank you.
Yes, we got to have that.
I'm a radio performer by trade, I suppose.
So I'm going to pick on Mr. Kevin E. first.
Oh, great.
So what'd you learn today?
Shut up, first of all.
Everybody's going to like that
Take
one.
away. Yeah.
Well, something I actually had more of a question, kind of.
Let's hear it.
Because I feel like in my professional life, I've sort of learned to kind of stop and listen a little bit. But in my personal life, like my wife accuses me of this all the time. She's like, "You're always talking, like you interrupt a lot," and I'm like, I don't know how you sort of implement those, like the professional skills into personal life, you know? I'm working on it. I really am. But it seems easier to do it when it's professionally.
Yeah, so we tend to be much more comfortable around those that we know personally, right? And so we allow ourselves to kind of just loosen up. The reality, though, is that, you know, those relationships that are personal, they're no less important. In fact, they're more important than those that are considered a professional. And so when you're in that type of situation and you're having conversations with people who are close to you, this is the opportunity that you can now put some of these like skills into play. And if they're not doing it, like your wife calls you out, you know, tell her thank you.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm glad.
Really,
Because then I'm like,
working
I
on
hope I'm not doing this with other people, you know?
And that's great. That's where you want to go, because that allows you to learn the skill, right? And you're more comfortable hearing it from somebody that's close to you. And trust me, she's okay with telling you.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, so she has no problem saying it.
And she says, I've gotten better at it. Look, I just did it right there.
Positive, though.
Yep.
That's a positive. She's giving you positive reinforcement.
True.
So you know what? You need to continue doing that for her.
But then when I've had a couple of cocktails, she says it comes right back. So.
I can't help you with that one. Yeah, that's a totally different conversation.
You know, and then going back to my undergrad in sociology, and I don't remember the philosopher or theorist that came up with it, but there is a theory out there about the front stage, backstage. So when we're at home and living in our houses, we're backstage. We let down our guard and we start becoming who we really are. And then we go into the workplace, and like leaders will do this. They'll show up as somebody else that they think they're supposed to be. And we do it as human beings. You go to the store and you interact with strangers. Well, I've got to be respectful. I got to do this. But when we go home with the people we love and spend the time with, we sometimes become the cruelest people on earth.
That is so true.
And it's hard. So, and I've even had somebody ask me, I got a DM on one of our social media platforms, said, do you do couples counseling? No. I'm strictly into leadership because that's a stage and I got it set up. I can't do it. But it's very similar. And a little teaser for future show coming up. We are bringing on a mental health counselor who helps with mental health issues and couples counseling, different stuff. It's gonna rock. All right. So
what did you learn?
I learned that I got to shut up. I think
Me too.
The other piece is I've got to stay engaged, and where I start wandering. And I mean, she made me, she humbled me a little bit.
I'm embarrassed to say that during this episode, I noticed myself doing it just in my head, even though I'm not talking. Like I'm chomping at the bit, like to interject with something. You know, I'm like, no, I need to be listening.
Yeah, no, it happens. It happens to all of us. It's a tough deal. So, Brooke, what'd you learn?
You know, I think the engagement part is always something that I can improve. Anyone can improve on. I think my personality is very strong, yellow and red, but that yellow comes out, and I love engaging and listening and everything, but I want to respond because I think in my mind, if I respond and I'm positive, I'm engaging with you, but it's that listening piece and the pause. That's what my takeaway is right now. I can still engage, but have really processed and listened and reflected so that my responses actually are more in line with the conversation itself. Not what I want to bring to the table, but what is that person that's talking? What do they really want to say?
Well, you just triggered something for me, and here I go again, interjecting. It's when you start to respond, instead of just waiting, you try to direct the conversation to a way where you feel more comfortable. Because so there's my learning moment. I got to learn to stay uncomfortable with the conversation to make it through it, so I don't make the other person feel like they're the idiot. No, I'm the idiot because I'm not listening.
Do you know what happens a lot too in that sense? We flip the conversation and it becomes about ourselves.
Yes, we hijack it.
I was thinking about that when we've done so many of these like social hours, right? With the Chamber of Commerce, in the city that we're in, and I listen to these conversations, and it's everyone trying to talk about who they are, and I'm listening, going, if we only asked more about the other person, you know, like there's something about that, because even if we are asking, we first want them to know who we are, you know, or how great I am. Or there is a discomfort and also not knowing sometimes, right? And so we feel like we need to come at it strong. Like, well, at least I'm an expert in X, Y, and Z. So I've got this golden ticket right here. There's no need for it.
Me, I always want to project myself on somebody. Say, hey, look at me, look how good I'm doing. And it's taken me a long time, and it's taken some humility. But when I make the conversation about you and don't talk about me, and I walk away and leave, it's more powerful than if I flip the script, because otherwise you're like, that guy just walked all over me. When I walk away and people go, wow, that guy's, he's really interesting. What do you say? Nothing. He listened to me the whole time. It's like, dang, snap. All right.
That's funny though, Rich. That actually reminds me of a saying that my dad implemented in my head growing up. He said, if you want to be interesting, be interested. I'm like,
hey, I like that.
I
That's
like
a
that a
quote. We
lot.
need to write
Yeah.
that. So repeat that one more time. If you
want to be interesting, be interested.
Dang, there it is. We waited 52 minutes and 47 seconds for you to bring that onto the show today, Kevin.
Sorry, it just clicked
that
in
was
my head.
powerful. All right, so we got to ask you, because I've asked everybody else, what have you learned so far today?
Oh, that's a great question. I've learned that, there are a lot of people, including my friends, that have amazing skills, but I also know, myself included, we can all better ourselves from one form or another. We have to be open to betterment.
There's always room for growth, isn't there?
Yeah. And I will tell you, I'm going to just pop one little thing in. The reason why they walk away feeling great after you've left and you've listened is because you allow them to talk about their favorite thing. Themselves.
Yeah, you're right.
That's so true. Yes.
All right, mic drop. Mic drop. Thank you. All right, so we got to move on to part number 2 here. You want to go first again, Kevin?
Sure, man. I'm always good for getting put on the
Yes,
spot.
you're good. We got to go right to you. You're like our punching bag.
Happy to be here.
How are you going to use this information, what you learned today, to improve your opportunities?
Let's see. First off, I will not be so enthusiastic about talking about myself when meeting someone, like at this social type thing. And for a while, that was kind of like my defense mechanism, was just ask questions, which is kind of okay. But now I've learned today there's sort of a balance that you can use that works for both people, and that's what I'm going to try to do.
That's awesome.
Professionally.
Ms. Coleman in the corner.
Yeah, it's going to go back to the pause, but I think there's an opportunity today, and we're going to be with a group of people all day long, and so it gives a great opportunity.
And what's going to happen if we all start listening?
I was about to say there are very few non-talkers. I can think of one in the entire group that might be listening. The rest of us all want to talk.
That's only because he's sitting in the room right now. He doesn't have a microphone in front of him. We told him when we walked in, shut up.
Yeah, he's unarmed.
I actually want to walk away from this weekend, and I always do, learning something about someone because they've had the opportunity to share something that they wouldn't unless there's space.
That's what I was trying to say. What Brooke just said. She summed it up better than me.
Okay.
No, it was both good. Heather, how are you going to use this new knowledge that you've just learned today, going out in the world?
I'm going to use it to be more patient. I think one of the things that I struggle with is recognizing that we are all working to better ourselves. And I need to be patient with the fact that they're working on it too. Not just me. So I need patience.
That's good.
Dang.
Yeah, that's good.
Don't ask me what I'm going to do. 'Cause
What are you going
have to
to
answer
do,
too, man.
Rich?
I do.
Yeah.
I do. It's my show.
it's your
This
show.
isn't fair. It's Brooke's show. I just gave it to her, so I have to answer. How am I going to use this information? I think it's as I continue to grow my business and people ask me, for help, I want to jump in and start helping. And you know this, we've talked about it. I'm a
Yeah.
fixer. I want to start fixing before I even have the full problem.
Right.
So the patience and the listening and understanding, just have to learn to keep asking more questions and just say, look, shut up. So I'm going to go back to that piece. Shut up. All right. So last question before we finish. Kevin E.
Yeah.
Who's your accountability partner on this project? Who's gonna hold you accountable to make sure you become a better listener, a better active listener?
All right. Well, I would say my wife, but I've already kind of used that one, and it's too personal. So, also, if you notice on my last response, I utilized a perfect pause. I don't know if Brick noticed that. Yeah, I did that just for you.
Beautiful.
Well, if it's all right with you, I'd like you to do it, Rich.
Absolutely, I'd be honored.
Well,
Be
thank
fun.
you.
All right, so now I'm just gonna jump ahead. So you're gonna be my accountability partner as well, and so are
Perfect.
you. And Heather, you know what? I'm gonna make you all be my accountability partner because I don't believe there can be too many. So you three are gonna help me become a better listener because you're all in my circle in different ways. And we talked about this earlier as we build our friendship. It's no longer Kevin and I, Brooke and I, Heather and I. It's
You
in
can't
Texas.
overload.
How do you say it in Texas? Y'alls? It's y'alls. It's all
All
ours.
y'alls.
It's all y'alls.
All y'alls.
It's all your circle. All right. So who's next? Brooke? Who's your accountability partner?
Yeah, I was thinking about that as you were asking. I actually think for me and for this to be important, it needs to be somebody who is a listener, who is probably more introverted than I am, probably more green if we're talking about our disc profiles there.
Yep.
But that knows me well enough and is willing to call me out. So I have two people in mind. They're dear friends, almost family friends that I'm going to reach out to.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. So we gotta come back and we're gonna have to ask you on our next
Yes,
show how
absolutely.
that's going. All right.
Yeah.
Just to make sure we hold you accountable because you're not using one of us. Heather, who's your accountability partner?
Actually, I have two. And if patience is what I need to work on, then both of my children will continue to push me far enough to really work on my
right,
patience.
so-
So my kids.
So I like to push buttons. I can push you a little bit. How are you gonna? So you got to get this message to your kids,
Correct.
So they can hold it. How are you gonna do that? How are you gonna deliver the message?
I'm just going to sit down and I'm going to have a conversation with them and tell them, I need your help.
Awesome.
That's good.
You know what? That's taking a humble route.
Yeah.
Will you do me a favor? Will
Maybe.
you let me know how it
Yeah,
turns out?
absolutely.
I bet you money you're gonna have a flood of emotions go through you because I bet you they're gonna listen to you because you're gonna grab their attention. They'll listen to you and they want to help you become a better mother.
Yeah, and I think they're going to take pride in telling me I'm not being patient. Yeah, I think that'll be
Well,
what
they get the
happens.
opportunity to tell you you're wrong. That's what they're looking
That's going to be very humbling for me. But yeah, they're going to have that too, and they're going to love it.
for. Yeah. Cool. All right. So we're down to the end of the show. So let's wind this bad boy down. What we got going on, Brooke?
Just want to say thank you for joining us today on our leadership journey.
If you're looking for more leadership guidance, please reach out to us and give us a follow on your favorite social media platform. Dignity-leadership.com on the World Wide Web.